Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases. Real quick before we jump in, today's material is actually from a SpeakDuo lesson. So if you want to take these things you learned today and actually practice them, you can go to SpeakDuo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their speaking abilities.
Which is such a great way to learn, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. Anyway, our mission today is simple. We are diving straight into 15 advanced idioms and phrases for English learners. We are skipping the basics.
Right, because, mastering these phrases, it isn't just about knowing the dictionary definitions.
Definitely not.
It's really about understanding the subtle nuances behind them. That is what makes you sound like a native speaker, whether you're in the boardroom or sitting down for an IELTS exam.
Exactly. So let's just start right at the beginning of a person's journey, like how people grow up and start their careers.
Okay, I like that.
Our first phrase is being born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
Yes. And this one is interesting because people often compare it to simply being, spoiled.
Right, they use them interchangeably.
They do. But spoiled relates to behavior. Like a kid can be spoiled by getting too many toys. But a silver spoon strictly means being raised in a very wealthy, highly privileged family. Like maybe your family owns businesses.
Oh, I see. So it's about structural wealth. Like if I were answering an IELTS Part 2 question, I could say, people assume he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth because his parents bought him a house right out of college.
Spot on. It's about the financial reality of his upbringing.
Got it. Okay, so moving past childhood, what about the phrase to drift around?
So compared to just traveling or backpacking, which sound very intentional.
Right, traveling sounds like you have an itinerary.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Drifting around implies moving from place to place without a clear purpose or direction. Taking small jobs in new towns, just seeing what happens.
Okay, let's unpack this though, because if a boss asks about a gap on my resume, is drifting around too negative? Like, does it sound like I'm lazy?
It can if you don't frame it well. But you can absolutely spin it positively. You could tell a boss, after graduation, I spent a year drifting around the country to gain diverse life experiences before committing to a corporate role.
Oh, wow. That makes it sound like a deliberate research trip.
Right. Completely changes the tone.
That's great. Okay, so once you stop drifting and find your purpose, you might be off to the races.
Yes. And this is so much stronger than just getting started. It implies starting with this immense energy and enthusiasm.
So at work, I might tell my boss, once the boss approved the budget, the team was off to the races and productivity soared.
Perfect. You can really feel the momentum in that phrase.
Absolutely. But before that momentum starts, companies usually have to check someone out.
Right, which is quite different from a formal investigation.
Yeah, checking someone out sounds more casual.
It is. It means to look into someone closely, but in an informal or social way. Like before making the final hiring decision, HR made sure to check out his references carefully.
It's just doing your due diligence, basically.
It's exactly. Nothing overly intense.
Okay, so once you're hired, you have to deal with the rules of the job and the people who try to bend them.
Oh, office politics.
Yes, the fun stuff. Let's talk about giving someone chapter and verse.
This is a great one. Compared to just giving someone detailed instructions, chapter and verse implies giving the complete, exact information.
Like you're citing a legal document or a religious text.
Exactly. So I could say, I didn't just summarize the compliance update, I explained it to the team chapter and verse so no one would make mistakes.
There is zero room for misunderstanding there. But what if people want to bypass those rules? That's when they look for loopholes.
Right. And looking for loopholes is distinct from breaking the rules outright.
Because breaking a rule gets you fired.
Usually, yes. Looking for loopholes means searching for legal gaps or weaknesses to use to your advantage without technically breaking them.
Sneaky. Like our legal team looked for loopholes in the vendor contract to legally reduce our financial obligations.
Which happens every single day in corporate law. I bet it does. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. We've all been victims of this next one. Falling for something.
Yes. And falling for something isn't just making a simple mistake. It specifically means being actively deceived or tricked by a plan or a scheme.
Like with phishing emails, right? I almost fell for something when I replied to a fake invoice from someone pretending to be the CEO.
That is the perfect example.
Yeah.
Someone set a trap and you stepped in it.
Terrifying. And speaking of traps, what about the phrase to square someone around?
This one is incredibly nuanced. It's not just escorting someone.
Well, escorting sounds polite.
Right. Squirting someone around as a companion carries the nuance of having hidden motives. You are keeping that person close so they can't freely interact with other people.
Oh, that is so manipulative. Like at a networking event, the event coordinator squared me around the whole evening, making me suspicious that he didn't want me speaking to competitors.
Exactly. It's control disguised as hospitality.
Wow. Okay, well, all this deception inevitably leads to conflict. Let's look at how advanced speakers describe tension, starting with setting a red rag to a bull.
So compared to just annoying someone, this means deliberately provoking someone into a strong, immediate, predictable, angry reaction.
You know what you're doing.
Completely. Like mentioning the missed Q3 deadlines to the sales director is like setting a red rag to a bull. He gets defensive immediately.
You are poking the bear, and when that explosion happens, someone usually gets put in the middle.
Right, and this is very different from mediating a conflict. A mediator chooses to be there.
They volunteer.
Yeah. But being put in the middle means being forced into a really uncomfortable position between two conflicting sides.
Like, my two managers were arguing over the budget and put me in the middle, asking me to decide who was right.
Which is a terrible position for any employee to be in.
A worst. So in that situation, maybe discretion is the better part of valor.
And what's fascinating here is that a lot of people think this just means being a coward.
Right, running away.
But it's not. It means it is wiser to avoid a risky action than to confront it directly. It is a strategic retreat.
So when the client started yelling, I realized discretion is the better part of valor and decided to step back rather than argue.
Exactly. You are just making the smart choice.
Okay, so after the conflict comes the fallout. Let's talk about the phrase to redress something.
Compared to just fixing something, redress is much more formal. It specifically refers to correcting an injustice or a wrong situation, often structurally.
So I organized a student petition to redress the unfair grading policies at our university.
Perfect. It sounds so much more powerful than just saying you tried to fix the grades.
It does. Now, if you're the one who messed up, you might owe an abject apology.
Yes. And this is not just saying sorry. An abject apology is deeply humble, showing extreme regret for a major wrongdoing.
So what does this all mean for everyday life? I shouldn't give an abject apology if I just, spill someone's coffee, right?
Exactly. But if your mistake cost the company $1 million, you give an abject apology and promise to make amends.
Fair enough. But sometimes an apology isn't enough, and you get drummed out of something.
Which is much worse than just being fired or laid off.
Yeah.
Being drummed out means being forced to leave an organization in absolute disgrace after a violation.
So after the embezzlement scandal, the board decided to drum the CFO out of the organization to protect its reputation.
It is highly public and very shameful.
And if that happens, you might want to get out of town.
Right. And this implies leaving quickly, often as a warning, to escape trouble or avoid conflict.
Like when the PR disaster started, the consultant was advised to get out of town until things cooled down.
Exactly. Just disappear for a bit.
Well, now that we've unpacked all these, it's time to test your ear for advanced English with a quick quiz. I'm going to read the question and the options, and feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer before we reveal it.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, question 1. Which sentence uses the idiom born with a silver spoon correctly based on context? Option A. He was obviously born with a silver spoon in his mouth, avoiding any hardships. Option B. The famous, wealthy royal baby was safely born with a silver spoon inside today. Option C. The talented professional silversmith crafted something perfectly born with a silver spoon inside it. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the correct answer is option A. Born with a silver spoon means being raised in structural wealth and privilege, just like that childhood friend whose parents bought him a house right out of college.
Great. Question 2. Select the context where the phrasal verb drift around is most appropriately used. Option A. The highly reckless professional race car driver attempted to dangerously drift around the sharp corner. Option B. After finishing university, the confused graduate decided to casually drift around the entire continent. Option C. The massive, terrible winter storm caused heavy white snow to completely drift around outside. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. We use drift around to mean moving from place to place without a clear purpose, much like taking a gap year to figure things out for your resume.
Moving on. Question 3. In which situation does someone accurately set a red rag to a bull, figuratively? Option A. The inexperienced Spanish matador attempted to physically set a red rag to a bull. Option B. The heavily frustrated, exhausted laundry worker violently set a red rag to a pole. Option C. Mentioning the massive corporate failure will basically set a red rag to a bull. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The right choice is option C. To set a red rag to a bull is to deliberately provoke a strong, predictable, angry reaction, like when you mentioned those missed deadlines to the defensive sales director.
Perfect. Question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase, drum someone out of something? Option A. The highly disappointed executive board decided to permanently drum him out of the organization. Option B. The incredibly talented professional percussionist attempted to beautifully drum someone out of the auditorium. Option C. The deeply exhausted, sleepy young teenager tried to quietly dream someone out of something. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
That would be option A. To drum someone out of something means forcing them out in absolute disgrace, exactly what happened to that CFO in the embezzlement scandal.
Right. Question 5. How would a professional accurately use the phrase chapter and verse, figuratively? Option A. The incredibly passionate, famous religious author published a beautiful new chapter and verse today. Option B. The highly experienced corporate lawyer flawlessly explained the complicated legal contract chapter and verse. Option C. The extremely talented university literature professor carefully recited the magnificent romantic chapter and verse. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. Giving information chapter and verse means providing exact, complete details, just like making sure a team perfectly understands a compliance update.
Nice. Question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the ability to square someone around? Option A. The confused elementary mathematics teacher attempted to successfully square someone around the paper today. Option B. The highly aggressive, frightened wild animal managed to dangerously scare someone around the forest. Option C. The highly suspicious, manipulative socialite was quietly squaring someone around the exclusive evening party. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
Option C is correct. To square someone around implies controlling their movements with hidden motives, keeping them close, just like that overbearing coordinator at the networking event.
So sneaky. Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the advanced phrase abject apology? Option A. The deeply embarrassed, guilty corporate manager delivered a completely sincere abject apology this morning. Option B. The incredibly confused university science student presented a terribly complicated object apology during class. Option C. The extremely frustrated, angry municipal lawyer demanded an immediate, absolute subject apology completely today. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option A. An abject apology is deeply humble and used for extreme regret. It goes way beyond spilling coffee, like making a $1 million mistake.
And finally, question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses fall for something, figuratively? Option A. The terribly clumsy, nervous mountain hiker unfortunately managed to violently fall for something hard. Option B. The incredibly gullible, inexperienced internet user unfortunately managed to completely fall for something fraudulent. Option C. The deeply passionate romantic landscape photographer waited impatiently every single fall for something beautiful. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And that would be option B. To fall for something means to be actively deceived by a trick or scheme, like replying to that fake invoice from the CEO.
Well, you crushed that quiz, and hopefully our listener did too.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I really want to leave you with a thought to mull over. Notice how many of these advanced phrases, looking for loopholes, squaring someone around, drumming someone out for, they all show how much of our advanced vocabulary is dedicated to navigating office politics, control, and reputation. Language isn't just about sharing information. It's really about power. So I challenge you to pay attention to your native language this week. See how many common idioms are actually just polite ways to describe conflict and manipulation.
That is such a fascinating perspective. It really proves that mastering these phrases is a giant leap toward total fluency. You are literally learning the unwritten rules of the room. Keep practicing these and paying attention to the power dynamics behind the words you hear every day. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.